bring more attention to that particular issue that needs to be. And so this is something that I guess me and my client will discuss in detail how we proceed, because it's my belief that, you know, their shell hostage, I have, that they're clearly getting something. She's not denying that they're getting something, but testifying. I think that's all I need. I think sometimes you bring more attention to an issue by trying to refute it, but it's my client's life, and it will ultimately be his decision.
And, we make sure that he also sees that.
He has it.
All right, cause prosecutor will be able to bring that in, and that probably will be very detrimental to the defendant. So I understand your concern and how this will then tip the scales, and you don't want it in, but if your client decides, then I guess you said it's his life, his choice.
It's his life, it's his choice, and if that person takes a stand, they're definitely going to use that, because
They have it.
they have it.
All right. Anything further before we begin?
Good, I just want to let the court know that, schedule-wise, or council got a list, but, we are going to put on, finish up with Officer Ratliff, cross-examination.
Yes.
And then we're going to do the Zoom witness, so we get that out of the way. She's out of the meeting. And then we're gonna put on the firearms expert who's here. All those three are pretty quick. And then I believe we have, Marva, Roberts, and, then we have, probably the son, if he landed last night. That's 11, it's going to be by 11, so we'll see.
All right.
So we'll play it by ear, Judge, but, and then this afternoon is school too, so.
All right. Anything before we bring the jury? Anything else?
No.
All right, thank you. Please rise. You can come up, James.
Okay.
You may be seated. Could you please just state your name again for the record?
Detective Ratliff?
And Detective, you do understand that you are still under oath?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead.
Good morning, Detective.
Good morning.
So, Detective, your main duty in this particular case was you executed both of the search warrants.
3 of them.
3 of the search
3 of
warrants.
them, yes.
And the search warrant was for the house, what house pronounced Jamel, German, and what other two search warrants did you?
The address on Jarman, Baker Street, and then Reardon.
Okay, I wanna go through, the Reardon search warrant. And you remember yesterday, the prosecutor put on, slides and she went through different things.
Yes,
You remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in one of the slides that, she went through, and Reardon, that was the Marva Mohammed address, correct?
yes, that was the house.
Okay. Now, there was an aerosol, in the, video, she said that, or you said that there's an aerosol gun, correct?
Yes,
Aerosol is not a real handgun.
no,
Okay. So that was, what's an aerosol? It's a,
just like a BB gun.
Okay.
Type thing.
But now, you didn't find any actual weapons in that particular house, correct?
Right,
Okay, now I wanna go back through it, but you did find a weapon case, correct?
yes,
Okay, and that particular weapon case, it had a name on it, correct?
yes.
Whose name was it?
D. Anthony Gordon.
Okay, did anybody ever go and do any research on D. Anthony Gordon? In other words, was that gun registered to him?
Yes,
It was registered to him?
that's the name, yes.
Okay, so did anybody ever go and ask D. Anthony Gordon why his gun case was there?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, now, did the D. Anthony Gordon, since y'all have a gun case, and the gun was registered, with the registration, you have the make and the model and all of that, correct?
Yes,
Do you know, and if you know, does that make and model, meet up with the, homicide? If you know,
I don't know.
you don't know, okay?
We will stipulate or agree that that caliber gun they found in the house at the search warrant, Mr. Gordon's gun, is a 9mm. The case, and that the gun in this case that committed the murder was a .45. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. So, with the address, the Reardon address, the only other thing that you found, there was some pictures of some boxes that you found, correct?
Yes,
Now, the boxes had ammunition in them, correct?
yes,
But the boxes, did the boxes have any address or anything on them? You know, I saw it was kind of going kind of fast, and I just saw the boxes, but you know, like sometimes you have boxes and they have like addresses on them, anything like that, do you remember?
I
Were they
believe,
just boxes?
I believe one of the boxes it was stamped with that address with Mr. Davis's name on it.
Okay, but that was a box that was empty, correct?
I don't remember if it was empty or not.
Okay, you don't know? Okay. So, now, and you go into that there's clothing there, correct?
Yes,
Men and women clothing?
yes,
Okay. And you took pictures of that there were men and women clothing, because the house, clearly somebody was living there, right?
yes,
Okay. Now, in doing, the search warrant, when you do search warrants, you always, I assume, you run checks to see who the registered owner is, who lights gas, telephone, and all of that, correct?
yes.
Was there, who was the lights and gas and different things in that house in, or do you know?
I didn't do any of that.
Okay, but that's something that's commonly done.
Oh, sometimes,
Okay, now, I wanna go to Mr. Moffitt, search warrant. In that particular search warrant, you took certain clothes, and you also took a cell phone, correct?
yes.
Okay. Do you know if that cell phone was ever downloaded or anything done with that cell phone? If you know,
Yeah, I don't remember.
okay. And then the third address that you, did was Mr. Mohammed's, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you retrieve from that particular search warrant, if anything?
The shell casings that were found outside, and then we see a laptop, a couple laptops from inside the house,
Okay.
some
So
cell
you
phones.
actually seized the laptop in that particular case?
Yeah, there were some laptops, yes.
Was it one or more?
There was more than one.
Okay. Do you know if any downloads on the laptops was done?
No, I don't know.
You know. Okay. Thank you, officer.
Any follow-up?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. Thank you for making excused. Who's our next witness going to be?
Your Honor, Angela Garcia, who's going to testify via Zoom.
It will be just, we need Mr. President. You'll have to- You're calling the lady on the Zoom.
Is that Ms. Garcia?
It is, sir.
Okay, Judge, you have Ms. Garcia?
I do. All right, you can call your next witness.
The people called Angela Garcia.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia, would you please raise your right hand?
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. You may put your hand down. Go ahead.
Is it
Good
best
morning.
I stand at the podium for the Zoom one, Judge? I don't know where I should
You
stand.
can stand wherever you're,
She can see you right there.
She can.
She can.
I'll go ahead and go here. She's a
Cameras to your right.
technical witness, so it's notes for that. All right. Would you tell the jurors what you do for a living?
I am a digital forensic analyst, so day to day I conduct digital forensic examinations on digital devices such as cell phones, computers, micro SD cards, and then I assist state, local, and federal agencies with these examinations
And who do you work for?
with the Michigan State Police.
And you work in the computer crimes unit? Is that-
Yes,
How long have you been working in that capacity?
almost 6 years now.
And describe again for the jurors what your general duties are in that position?
Day to day I conduct these digital forensic examinations and will do my analysis and create reports for then the investigators to review. I'll assist with search warrant executions, helping identify which devices to take, do on-scene preview, anything that has to do with digital forensics is what I assist with.
Okay. So you not only help Michigan State Police investigations, you also will help with local investigations, is that correct?
Correct.
And as a digital forensic analyst, that's the correct title, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. If I call you a digital forensic analyst, what education and work background you have that qualifies you to say you're a digital forensic analyst?
I have a bachelor's degree specifically in digital forensics, and as well as various trainings that I've attended since my role here with Michigan State Police. I've accumulated just about over 1,000 hours of technical training related to conducting these forensic examinations, what artifacts we might find, how to locate these, what they mean, and just specifically for forensic examinations.
And have you been called to testify in the past as an expert in this field?
I have.
Judge, at this time, I ask that the witness be recognized as an expert in the area of digital forensic analysis.
any objection?
Your Honor, may I ask a few questions?
You may.
How many times in the past have you been certified as an expert to testify in court?
As an expert, I believe twice.
So you have only been certified twice to testify as an expert in court?
In court, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any objection? Ms.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. She will be qualified and seen as a digital forensic analyst. Expert. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, I'd like to direct your attention to an investigation that you assisted with, that was Muskegon Heights Police Department with the primaries on it, but major case team with Michigan State Police officers like Officer Harmon and Detective Harmon and Detective Vanderbilt, and those folks were involved in. This was a case involving, so I think it's your incident number, CCU 365722. Is that accurate?
Yes.
What support did you provide in this investigation?
I was given various cell phones and was asked to complete the data acquisition of them, so get the data off of these phones, as well as review. There was an infotainment system that was submitted and a search warrant return that was also submitted. And I was asked to conduct analysis on them and create whatever reports were available for the investigators to also continue reviewing.
Let's start with the cell phones. So my understanding, you received 5 cell phones. Is that accurate in this investigation?
In the original request, it was 5, a total of 6 though.
Okay. And can we go through and identify the 5 cell phones as you have them identified in your report?
Sure.
Can you tell me what they are? How they're
Yeah,
identified?
do you want the different, I'm sorry, do you want the different item numbers, who they
No,
belong to?
all
or-
I'm looking for is, if I go through, let's say, item number 1, you have that identified, correct me if I'm wrong, as an Apple iPhone. And your information from the detectives, because you don't know firsthand, is that it comes from a Julius Muhammad, or is associated with a Julius Muhammad, correct?
Correct.
So you did download that phone and the contents.
Yes.
Explain to the jurors briefly what that process is.
Depends, the process might vary at times depending on the phone and what's supported, but with these specific phones, what I was able to do is connect them each to one of our forensic tools, and that tool gains access to the internal memory of these devices and obtains the different logs, different databases, application information, communication, everything that's stored on the device that is available through this tool. We're able to, what it does is it extracts it and basically creates a copy of what it can get. And from there, it creates one big file that contains all of those the contents of those devices. And then that would be the process of the data acquisition.
And you did, so when you get a phone to download, you don't alter any of the content of the phone, do you, in that process?
There are some settings you might have to change in order to allow the tools to, but altering the actual data, such as communication on that and those type of things, we do not.
And then once you do this download, is that information still available on the phone? Like, you get a phone from me, you download it, and it's returned to me, my phone's intact, correct, the contents?
Typically, yes.
Okay. On this particular phone, it's identified as an Apple iPhone SE, associated with a Julius Muhammad. You did do the download and some forensic examination. You did have some findings with regard to that phone, correct?
I did.
And when I say that, you tell the jurors, you go through and look at every single communication in that phone? I mean, that's a lot of data.
It is. We're not.
Go ahead.
We're not able to obviously go through every single text message, every single photo, but we are able to kind of narrow our examinations we're given dates of possible incidents, maybe some communication that might be of interest, and kind of can narrow down communication that way.
So you had some things that the detectives told you, we're kind of looking at this and that, could you look at communications with a certain person or on a certain date, things like that, is that fair?
Yes.
And all the, once you do the download and you note some of these findings, is that, do you use a software system to make that?
Leave, Your Honor.
I'm asking if she uses a software system.
That's overruled.
Do you use a software system to convert that data, like decode it, make it more readable for the detectives?
Yes, so one of our other tools, or our software, they allow us to load in that file that we created, that copy that we were able to make, and it loads it in, decodes it, makes it into a human readable format. It knows, it's able to divide the different user artifacts that might be in there and separate them into each of their own groups so that we can easily identify, okay, these are the callouts from the phone, this is the web history, this is communication, right, chats, text messages, and it divides it up for us to be able to more easily review it and make, any searches or anything that we'd like to do for the analysis.
But again, it doesn't alter the content, just puts it into
Correct.
readable form.
Correct.
And were all these findings, once you download the phone, was all that data sent on to the detectives in this case?
Yes.
Let's talk about item number 2. The second cell phone you've identified in your report, you identify as a Sense TW102 cell phone associated with a Demetrius Moffat. Is that correct?
Correct.
And did you do the same process, download that phone and then use the software? I think it's Celebrite. Is that the software you use?
For data acquisition, the software we use is called GrayKey. But then, yes, we use Celebrate Physical Analyzer to load that in and get the readable format of it.
Okay. And you had some findings with regard to that download in the contents, correct?
There was some findings, yes.
Again, all that information is passed on to the detectives in your report with all the data.
Correct.
Let's talk about the third one. Let's identify the third cell phone for the jurors. Samsung SM cell phone that is associated in your report with a Glenn Davis. Is that correct?
Yes.
In fact, you had 2 cell phones, didn't you, that the officers identified or for you as being related to Glenn Davis?
Yes, item 3 and item 5.
So item 3, you identified as a Samsung, correct?
Correct.
I know there's some numbers after the Samsung, but for our purposes, it's a Samsung, correct?
Yes.
And then the other phone that was associated with him in your investigation was item number 5, and that's an iPhone 13.
Yes.
All right. Did you have any findings with regard to the Samsung Glenn Davis phone?
There were some artifacts, yes.
And I call them findings, you call them artifacts?
Yes, it's still similar, yes.
Okay. Again, all that data was transferred to the detectives for them to use in their investigation.
Correct.
Because once you send all that over, you said that you don't do, I call it So we have 1, 2, and 3, 5. What did you identify as cell phone 4? Oh, here it is. It's, is this correct? It's an Apple iPhone 11 associated with a Marva Muhammad. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
You did the same process, downloaded it, used the software to decode, and then made some findings.
Yes, this specific phone wasn't the exact same process because it wasn't supported by that GrayKey tool that I used for the other devices. So it was a little bit more limited, the data I was able to get from that, but I still used a different tool and was able to do the same process where it connects to it, extracts the data that I could get. I had to also do a manual examination on that phone where, manually had to verify what I could see on that phone. Just due to that support limitation, but then yes, the rest of it is the same. It loads it into the program, creates the reports, and then the investigator is able to review what I was able to get for that phone.
Okay, so just so I understand this, with regard to this phone, you had to use different software than GrayKey, correct?
Correct.
And you said that you had to do a manual examination as well. You didn't do that on the other phones?
I did to verify, but I didn't have to do that. With the other phones, the GrayKey was able to pull application data. With this specific phone, to get even any of that application data, I had to manually go in and took screenshots of them.
Okay, that's what you mean by manual. Go in, scroll through, take screenshots, like I did.
Correct. Yes.
All that information and evidence is sent out to the detectives as well?
Yes.
Cover that phone. Okay. There's been some evidence in this case thus far, and I know it's in your report, about when you examined the iPhone 13 associated with Glenn Davis, that you did make some findings or notations regarding FaceTime calls.
Yes.
And can you describe for jurors what you found with regard to that?
One that was noted was on December 19th of 2022 at around 7:02 p.m. There was around a 20-minute, or I believe 22-minute FaceTime call that was completed with somebody in this context.
So you put in your report approximately 22 minutes, correct?
Correct.
And the data that you extract from that, from Glenn Davis's iPhone, are you able to determine who the FaceTime communication was with?
I can determine it by the contact name that he had and I believe the phone number that was associated with that.
And what contact name did he have in his phone that's associated with the number that was involved in that FaceTime with Glenn Davis?
I refer to my report for the exact name.
Any objection?
No objection.
So the contact name is named Fats, and then in parentheses meth, space D, and the phone number associated is 602-430-2924.
Are you able to see in the data the exact start time of that FaceTime call?
Approximately, I could see that it was at around 7:02 p.m.
And why does it have to be approximate? Why isn't it specific as to that time?
You know, sometimes our cell phones, as many cell phone users know, it can be delayed. You can try to click something, it might not be at the exact second, or even if the phone call starts, the time that the log happens on the actual device in the internal memory, you know, there might be just a little bit of a lag, so we can never say exactly this time, but it was approximately 7:02 p.m.
But when we're talking about lags, are we talking about several minutes, or are we talking about a minute or seconds?
Usually seconds.
Now, you had the start time at 19:02, and that's military time, that's 7:02 p.m., correct?
Correct.
And would the phone device be on the same time zone as current time here, if it's used here?
In this case, I know this phone was set to do that, to have it automatically date and time. I can't say at that exact time what this phone time zone was, but of current, yes, it was set to the automatic time zone.
Are you able to tell the jurors you were able to find the end time of that FaceTime call?
Yes, it would be approximately 22 minutes after.
Now, you say that, but does the data itself, I know I have an exhibit from you, and it indicates on there that the FaceTime call started at 19:02, but it does not have an end time, it just says approximately 22 minutes on the data, correct?
I believe so, yes.
It doesn't say ended at, if you add 22 minutes to 7:02, we're looking at 7:24, would that be accurate?
Yeah, I'd have to review that specific report in the reader report to know, but a lot of times, yes, it will just say the start time and then it will show the duration and show the 22 minutes.
Are you able to tell by your examination of that Glenn Davis's iPhone whether or not any people were actually talking, communicating during that FaceTime call?
I cannot.
So there's no video or image data from that call? You see what I'm
Correct.
saying?
Yes.
Are you able to tell who terminated the call, how it ended? Did it originate with Glenn Davis's phone?
Yes, it originated from that phone.
Can you tell how it was terminated, who terminated it?
I cannot at this time.
Can you tell if it was a dropped call at the end?
I cannot.
So you can't even tell if it was intentionally terminated at that specific time?
Correct.
And you correct me if I'm wrong, okay?
Yes.
Okay. In addition to and all that information data sent to the detectives so they can do further investigation on their own in the phones, correct?
Yes.
Now the humans can read it, right?
Correct.
Okay. Let's switch to the next thing you were asked to do, which you also asked to, you mentioned a search warrant was executed, and that was for iCloud records, correct?
Yes, it was for the account Glenn Davis 23.
And let me ask you this, why would it be necessary to get iCloud information if you have the phone?
There are some things that are stored locally on the device, on, you know, our iPhones or even Android phones, but then there's also additional data that sometimes a user can set for their data in order to optimize the phone storage on their phone. They can set their photos or their messages to really be stored on the cloud. So although some of our tools are able to extract that, there are some times where it's not able to extract that because it's actually resided on the iCloud, not on the phone itself. There might be deleted artifacts that on the phone are no longer visible, but they're still stored on the cloud. So it's always recommended to do both the iCloud return as well as the phone, search for the phone.
So for instance, with regard to the FaceTime call we just discussed, was there anything deleted, appeared to be deleted from the phone with regard to FaceTime?
The FaceTime application itself appeared to be deleted from that phone, yes.
The information that was received from the iCloud search warrant was just for the iPhone associated with Glenn Davis, is that correct? Not for the other phones?
Correct.
Was that data sent on to the detectives for them to examine it and, since they know their case better, look for more information?
Yes.
Were you also asked to provide some type of GPS data, location data?
Yes, I was asked to export the locations, yes.
Tell us what that means and how you do it in layperson words.
So for that, I just reopened the reports that I created, because each of those reports had, you know, all the data from the devices, went to the locations, the full device locations, and I did this for Julius Muhammad's phone and for the 2 phones belonging to Glenn Davis. And what I did is just open up those locations and then export them as 2 different files, an Excel document and a CSV file, in order for then our intelligence analysts to then review.
And so explain to the jurors, like on my cell phone, how does the GPS data work? How does it get it? Do I have to have a location app turned on? Do I have to have, how does that specifically work? How's that data collected?
A lot of it is collected in the background. So even if a user turns off location services, right, our applications are still constantly tracking those locations. Our phones are, for the most part, they're doing that, trying to help us as a user, right, so that they can kind of predict. I don't know if anyone has ever opened up their iPhone and it says, hey, here's map directions to this spot, right? Or here, if you're trying to post something on Facebook or on something, it might recommend you to tag the location that you're at, right? So in the background, these applications, the phones themselves are constantly tracking these locations and keeping track of it, and then they're getting stored into different files on the phone, databases in this case, and that's what we're able to recover.
And then you said you send that information on to the intelligence analyst that's working with the investigation?
Yes.
And do you know who that was in this particular investigation?
It was analyst Parker DeGroot.
And you know he works with Major Case here? Is that
Correct.
I believe you were also asked with regard to this investigation to collect the data from an infotainment center from a vehicle. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
What vehicle was it? Do you know?
I believe it was a 2019 Kia Sportage. And it was, I was just asked to basically conduct forensic data acquisition for whatever I could for that infotainment system.
And tell them what infotainment system is if they don't know.
It's pretty much that computer screen that most vehicles have in the center console, right? As it's what allows the user to use whatever applications or what the radio, the sound system, the maps or anything like that that's on more of the modern vehicles, and it's what allows the user to interface and connect to that and use it day to day while they're using their vehicles.
And why can that information on someone's vehicle's infotainment center be relevant to a criminal investigation?
A lot of times those are also keeping track of user activity that occurs on that. Sometimes we're able to recover devices that might have been connected via Bluetooth or via cable. We're able to sometimes even get text messages or phone calls that happened or occurred during that connection while the phone was connected to that vehicle. We're able to obtain location artifacts, see even sometimes the the gear shift, right, what shift the vehicle was in at times, so at times it's relevant at times.
And did you, actually examine the data that was recovered from that, or was it just sent over to the intelligence analyst, Major Case?
For the infotainment system, I did review it.
Did you find anything, of evidentiary value in that download from the entertainment center in this case?
I did not, it was pretty limited what I was able to get for that, so nothing of evidentiary value that I could find.
Is that unusual?
No, especially not for the newer vehicles.
And this was a newer vehicle?
2019, yeah, approximately.
Do you actually do anything else to assist the investigators here locally with regard to this particular murder investigation?
No, I believe we covered everything.
I have nothing further to say, Sean.
Thank you. Senator Bell, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Yana. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Now, I'm not a technology person at all, right? So you may have to help me with some of the Lego. Now, in this particular, your particular focus on this job was that you analyzed 5 cell phones, correct?
6 total cell phones.
6 phones altogether. Now, the prosecutor talked about FaceTime. FaceTime is an app that to use it, you have to download it on your phone, correct?
FaceTime actually is normally automatically on Apple devices,
Okay.
so most people think,
So if you have an Apple device, it's automatically on there, correct?
yes, it typically is.
Okay. And just for, so we can be complete, FaceTime allows you to look at the person while you're talking to them, correct?
Correct.
Much like you and I are doing now. Like, you
Yes.
you can look at me, I can see you, and this and that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, in the phones, I wanna go into the phone of Glenn Davis' iPhone. You say that on December the 19th, it was a 22-minute FaceTime, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you have in your data who that FaceTime was with, correct? The telephone number, and that the FaceTime also correlate with somebody in his contacts, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, and the FaceTime happened, how do you know for sure that the FaceTime happened at 7:02?
That's the time that the database reported that log as happening, and so we can usually trust that that database sees that as occurring and verify that way.
Okay. And it ended at, it was a 22-minute FaceTime, correct?
Correct.
So one of the things is, the prosecutor asked you about how it was terminated or things like that. Your particular technology doesn't necessarily give that information, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's not something that it just says that it ended. That's not something that a person can manipulate or anything like that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, so this FaceTime happened on December 19th at 7:02 p.m., correct? Ma'am?
Correct, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. And lasted 22 minutes. And it was to a Arizona number with a, and the Arizona number corresponded to a contact that had nephew in it or NEP?
NEPH, I believe, yeah.
Okay. Now, the prosecutor asked you about, the car, and you went into how the newer cars, you're able to use the phone, have a, you're able to use the phone, or it's able to download different things for GPS and different things like that, correct? did do analysis on that particular car, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you say that you didn't find anything that was evidential for that particular car? Anything that was of
Yes.
value? Correct?
Yes, the data that I was able to extract from that infotainment system was very limited.
Okay. And, because with the new cars, they do have GPS and they have where you can use the phone and not hold the phone and, all kind of gadgets, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Moffitt phone, the prosecutor you also did Demetrius Moffitt phone, correct?
Correct.
When you GPS'd him, did you get his locations?
I believe I did get locations, however, I did not export location reports for that specific phone.
Okay, so with, now, I know that you work for the, Michigan State Police. Do the officer OIC tell you what he wants and that becomes your focus?
Not that it becomes my focus, but they'll tell me some facts of the case that might be relevant, correct?
Okay, now, so Demetrius Moffitt, you never did GPS his phone for that particular day to see if he was at certain locations, correct?
I believe I would have reviewed that one for the specific locations, I just didn't export and create a separate location export for that specific phone.
Okay, so you might have done it, but you don't know what the results were because you didn't do a report. Is that,
Right, I didn't create an export of it.
okay. Now, she talked about iCloud, right? And iCloud is where when you take pictures on your phone and, that's where it goes, if you have an Apple, correct?
It depends on what setting a user uses, but it can be one of the places that it's stored, yes.
Okay. And did you look at everybody's iPhone on this particular, out of the 5 phones that you did you look at everybody's iCloud? Because with Samsung, it wouldn't have an iCloud, correct?
Correct.
Only an Apple have an iCloud, correct?
Well, anybody, with any device, you can use an iCloud account. So if you could, you could set up an Android phone, but using a different email. It wouldn't have to be Google email. But for the most part, yes, those iCloud accounts are typically associated with iPhone users.
Okay. With Julius Muhammad, did you ever look into his iCloud account?
I did not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any follow-up?
Just briefly, Judge, my mistake, you mentioned that there was a 6th phone that wasn't in the original report. What was the 6th phone identified as?
The 6 was also an Apple iPhone. The phone owner of that device was unknown because it was located in that Kia Sportage that I worked on, that vehicle. And it was very limited, the information that I was able to get from that phone.
And you only get search warrant iCloud information for wherever you're asked by the detectives, correct?
Correct.
And if someone has, I know like for instance, Demetrius Moffitt did not have an iPhone, correct?
Correct.
Let me ask you this. If you don't have Wi-Fi on your phone, you have a phone that you just use Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi or whatever you have, does that limit the data you can get off someone's phone?
It can, yes.
If someone has a location device turned off on their phone, does that limit the location information you get?
It can, yes.
Thank you.
So the prosecutor asked you about a 6th phone, correct?
Correct.
You didn't get any information from that phone, correct?
I did get information, it was just very limited user information
Okay.
because we did not have a passcode for that phone.
You did not get any GPS on that phone, correct?
Correct, I don't believe I did.
Okay. And, with Moffitt phone, the prosecutor asked you about, that wasn't an iPhone, correct? That was a basic phone,
It was an Android phone, correct?
an Android. And she asked about Wi-Fi, even though it's an Android phone, it did have Wi-Fi on it, correct?
It most likely had it. I don't know what the settings were set to, but yeah, it most likely did have Wi-Fi capability, yes.
Okay, so if Mr. Demetrius Moffitt phone had Wi-Fi on it, it's possible to GPS it, correct? Because to
It's
GPS
possible.
somebody, you only need Wi-Fi, correct?
For, you mean when the phone tracks these locations?
Yes.
When the phone, it doesn't necessarily have to be Wi-Fi, but it allows it to get some, yes. But the phone does not have to be connected to Wi-Fi, in order to get those locations, correct?
So you're saying that even a phone can track your location without even being connected to Wi-Fi?
Correct.
So basically, your phone is a walking, GPS. If you have your phone with you, that, it can be a GPS system to tell exactly where you're at.
It can be, yes.
Okay. And the phone that the prosecutor asked about, Moffitt, it was capable of GPS, correct?
It most likely was,
Yes.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. You are all set.
Thank you. Thank you.
The people call Russell Karsten. We already got it. Mary's here, she's getting it.
Are you connected already?
I'm going to.
Please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do. Please have a seat, state your name for the record.
My name is Russell Karsten.
Good morning, Mr. Preston.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Could you tell the jury what you do for a living, Mr. Karsten?
Yes, ma'am. I'm employed with the Michigan State Police. I am currently assigned to the Grand Rapids Laboratory, where I work as a firearm and team work examiner, and also run our crime scene response team.
And how long have you been a forensic analyst back in the firearms unit?
Oh, approximately 14 and a half years. I was a road trooper before that for approximately 10 years on the road.
Can you describe to the jurors your educational and work background that allows you to say and work as a firearms expert?
So I graduated from Hope College in 1997 with a bachelor's degree, minoring in both biology and chemistry. I entered recruit school with Michigan State Police in 1999, served at the Hard Post for approximately 10 years. Transferred in 2009 down to the Sterling Heights Crime Lab, where I began my firearm and tool mark examiner training, and transferred, I think it was March of 2010 to the Grand Rapids Lab, where I continued to finish my firearm and tool mark examiner training. My training consisted of a couple different training programs. One was run through the National Forensic Science Training Center. It was about 18 months long, and successfully passed the training requirements for that program. I also completed a training manual for firearm and tool mark examinations put on by the Michigan State Police. I had additional assignments and testing to be done, successfully passed that as well. And then worked under the supervision of a fully trained firearm and tool mark examiner for about 8 months, conducting casework under their supervision. At the end of all that training, I took a competency test, passed that, and was deemed competent to become a firearm and tool mark examiner. Part of that training and experience involved touring different laboratories, different manufacturing facilities. I toured some pretty big name firearm manufacturing facilities, Glocks, Smith & Wesson, Remington, just to name a couple. as well as some tool manufacturing facilities, Mayhew Tools, Channel Lock. Continue to go through training as it comes up and it's available to me. I'm a member of the Association of Firearm and Tool Mark Examiners, and I also conduct some teaching in the field in both crime scene and firearm and tool mark examinations.
Have you been called to testify as an expert in the area of firearms and true mark examination?
I have, I believe it's 16 counties here in Michigan. I've been called to testify, and this is approximately my 80th testimony.
80th?
80th, yes ma'am.
At this time, I ask that the court recognize the witness as an expert in the field of firearms and true mark examination and analysis.
No, Judge, yeah.
Court will qualify Mr. Preston as a firearms and tool marking experience and analysis. Examiner and analysis, sorry.
Thank you, Judge. All right, let's start with this. I'm going to be asking you about things like shell cases, some cartridges, bullets, fragments. I asked you, did not think you usually bring with you, to bring your toy bullet. You know, it's, explain the different components of a cartridge so that we all understand what items we're talking about in the investigation.
Sure, be glad to. As prosecutor is referencing, this is my plastic model I usually bring with me to court. This entire component here is sometimes called bullets or rounds. We, as the firearm and tool mark examiners, call this a cartridge. This would be comprised of the casing, the primer on the back, the gunpowder located inside, and the bullet. This is in the unfired state. Cartridges would be loaded into a firearm and then fired. The bullet generally travels down the barrel and leaves the cartridge case. The cartridge case on some guns, semi-automatic type firearms, is automatically ejected from the firearm. These would be left behind. The casing I would look at markings on the backside. Generally in the firing pin impression, that's this small hole here in the, or indentation, I should say, in this center of the case, as well as some of the marks around the indentation on the breech face.
Okay, so if I say the wrong word for what an item is, correct me, okay, so we're on the same page.
Sure.
All right. I'm going to direct your attention to an investigation you're involved in, and I think it's your laboratory number GR226795. Is that right?
Yes.
I think you generated 2 reports?
2 reports.
Okay. Relevant to this investigation.
Correct.
On report 1, will you, did police agency turn in some possible evidentiary items to you for examination?
They did. 2 fired cartridge cases were submitted for comparison.
I'm going to show you what's already been admitted, I believe, as people exhibits 9A and 9B.
Yes.
Can I close this witness, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm going to ask you if you recognize both those items.
Yes, I do. In container 1 will be item 1. This has looks like 2 seals on it, both with my initials on it. One is dated 12/27 of 23, and the other is 1/5 of 23. In this other container, People's Exhibit 9B is container 2, which contains item 2. Both of these items are fired cartridge cases.
And describe to the jurors what analysis and examination you did with regard to those 2 fired shell cases you received.
Sure. So I was not submitted a firearm for comparison, so I took the 2 fired cartridge cases and attempted to answer the question, were these fired by the same firearm or not? I use a comparison microscope. Basically, that's 2 microscopes built into one. So it's got a field of view, and I can look at a side-by-side comparison of evidence on the left stage with evidence on the right stage, bring it right together and take a look. I did that comparison using these 2 fired cartridge cases, looking at the individual characteristics on the breech face. That's this area here on the fired cartridge case, And I looked at the individual characteristics that are created during the manufacturing process of the firearm that fired these two, and to look to see how much agreement there were with those individual characteristics. It's my opinion that these two fired cartridge cases were fired by the same firearm.
I know you did not have a weapon to examine to compare to these shell cases, correct?
Correct.
Were you able though to determine based on your examination either the caliber or manufacturer type of weapon that would have fired these?
The caliber of the weapon is marked on the head stamp, and it's a .45 auto caliber firearm.
And there were two types of ammunition though, manufactured, with regard to the two shell cases, correct? They're not the same manufacturer.
Correct. They had two different head stamps. The head stamps is generally the manufacturer or the marketer of the ammunition, and these were by two different companies.
I'm gonna show you what I marked for purposes of identification, as we did it 18B. You recognize what I'm showing you?
I do. This is a photograph that I take as part of my general documentation of my casework. It has the head stamps of the two fired cartridge cases, with one being on the left and two being on the right. And just the photograph is just for my reference to document head stamps and also the general condition of the item. And it's also used for technical review when somebody else is reviewing my work to make sure that I've recorded the head stamp information correctly.
Sorry, before you show that to the jurors.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, I think it's got it anyway. That photograph fairly accurately depicts the two shell cases you examined, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
This time I move for its admission.
No objection,
You sure about
And that was People's Exhibit
18B.
18, People's Exhibit 18B will be admitted. You can put that on your screen.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Jeff. So now that it's been admitted, everyone's looking at the photograph, and those are the two what do you call that part that we're looking at?
Yeah, so the two items are called fired cartridge cases. What I'm looking at is the, under the microscope, is the small imperfections on the, I guess you'd call it the center circle, next to where the dimple is located. That's called the firing pin impression.
And you were able to tell by your examination that these both are fired from the same gun.
That's my opinion, yes, based on my training and experience.
And what you tell the jurors is, based on the ammunition itself, is it's fired from something that takes .45 caliber ammunition.
It's .45 auto caliber ammunition, to be specific.
Now, sometimes, are you able to tell the jurors what type of firearm would fire this, other than .45 caliber?
Generally, it's a semi-automatic pistol, although there are some submachine guns that fire the .45 auto caliber firearm as well, such as the Tommy gun.
And the fact that they're manufactured by two different companies, you see that a lot, don't you?
I do.
Where someone's gun's loaded with mixed ammunition, just the same caliber.
As long as it's the same caliber, it'll fire should fire in the gun just fine.
Okay. Let's talk about the second report and the items that were submitted to you for examination in this case.
Okay.
Describe for the jurors what evidence you received with regard to your second examination.
So I received these two fired cartridge cases again, along with a fired metal jacketed bullet, some metallic fragments, and an unknown metallic fragment for evaluation.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for purposes of identification for you to take a look at. 18A. Do you recognize what I'm showing you?
Yes, ma'am. Again, two different photographs of the same items in the general condition that I received them and as how I marked them for analysis.
what were you asked to do with regard to these particular items of evidence?
Generally, when we receive bullets, we're asked to compare if we can, to see if they're fired by the same firearm, possibly to compare them to a specific firearm if I can. And if not, classify the bullets as to what caliber they might have been fired from, what caliber firearm it might have been, what manufacturer, if we can tell, and any other information I can tell about these bullets.
Does Pupil Exhibit 18A fairly and accurately depict the items you were given to examine? That you just talked to yours about?
It does.
This time I move for omission of 18A.
No objection, Your Honor.
18A will be admitted.
I'm going to hand you now. Thank you. The photograph you're looking at, 18A, does that show all the items that you received, that are either fragments or potential bullets or projectiles to examine in this case?
It does.
I'm going to show you People's Exhibit. Is there any objection to the admission of the evidence that was taken in the autopsy that he's examining?
No, Your Honor. Your Honor, I have no, opposition to it.
Correct. So
The prosecutor did.
what are they going to be?
Thank you, Judge. It's People's Exhibit 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. And I think that parties will agree that these are all specimens that were taken in the autopsy of the victim in this case, and that's what we're looking at in the photograph above.
All right, so, exhibits, People's Exhibits 12, 13, 14, 15. Any objection to those of all being admitted?
No, Your Honor, and just for the record, previously preparing for trial, me and the prosecutor put on the list exhibit, in preparing for trial.
Thank you. So, People's Exhibit 12, 13, 14, 15 will be admitted.
And it's also 16, I'm sorry.
Okay, and 16. Excuse?
And Judge, may we approach? Okay. All right, now all these items here, I'll show these to you. They've already been admitted, but I believe those contain all the items we're looking at here on the left.
To be honest, I don't recognize People's Exhibit 12 or 13. I do recognize People's Exhibits 14, 15, and 16.
And 14, 15, and 16, do those include all the items that we're looking at on the photograph?
Correct.
Okay. So the other items in the autopsy, those would not be items that were submitted to you for examination?
Correct.
The doctor's gonna testify, Dan, would you like me to wait till those two to the doctor?
Please wait a minute, those
Okay.
two doctors.
I sure will.
All right, so let's go back. What two were those?
These are People's Exhibits 12 and 13.
12 and 13 are not. Go ahead.
All right. Okay, what are we looking at?
People's Exhibits 14, 15, and 16 are the containers of items 5, 6A, B, and C that I broke down are all contained within container 6, or People's Exhibit 15. And the small silver metallic fragment there, labeled as 7, was contained in People's Exhibit 16.
But again, also the autopsy, to your knowledge.
These were submitted by the agency. I couldn't testify past that.
All right, so let's talk about these. What type of analysis did you do with regard to these particular items?
So I did comparison and bullet classifications on these items.
And what conclusions were you able to draw?
It's my opinion that item 5 and 6A were inconclusive as having been fired by the same firearm. And item 5 was further classified as consistent with being a 45 class metal jacketed bullet. Displays 6 slanty grooves with a red twist. And there's a long list of potential firearms that could have fired that bullet. Item 6 is consistent with being a sintered type or frangible type powdered metallic bullet. Those bullets are generally constructed using powdered metal, some sort of binder, some high heat and pressure, and they fragment upon striking something. I was required to classify them by our own standard procedures manual as 3 separate items, and so 6A is consistent with being a frangible type bullet. I couldn't further classify it because of its small nature and lack of information available to me. 6B and 6C are also consistent with being those same frangible type bullets. I couldn't further classify. Just to clarify, 6A did exhibit some conventional type rifling with a right twist, and in my opinion, item 7 is not consistent with being a component of ammunition.
Are you able to, you would analyze 7 to determine what type of metal it is? Is that in your job description?
It was, I believe it was non-magnetic. I have it recorded in my notes, but past that, I couldn't tell you.
Okay. With regard to 5, which was the only one that you could form an opinion about, correct?
Correct.
Based on the evidence that's still on the item.
Correct.
You said it's consistent with being fired, being 45 ammo?
45 class is generally what we have to specify, and it gets down to the technical aspects of what's a caliber. When we talk about caliber can mean the bullet diameter and or the cartridge case length or shape. And when you combine this unfired component of ammunition, this is what a caliber is determined as. Once that bullet is fired down the barrel and separates, I no longer know what caliber, which is marked on the casing, this bullet is. And so that's why I'm giving it more of a general broad class to include more 45 caliber ammunition. It's consistent with, based on base diameter and bullet weight, with being fired by firearms chambered in 45 auto caliber.
So is this correct, that the number 5, that bullet, is consistent with being associated with the shell fired casings that you examined?
I couldn't say that specifically. The marks are erased from any marks that are left on a bullet when it separates from the case because it's going down the barrel, and those marks get overridden. It is, in my opinion, consistent with bullets that are fired from 45 auto caliber firearms, and that is the same caliber as what the cartridge cases were.
You're just gonna say that that bullet came from one of those casings?
Correct.
Okay. And there's nothing from the fragments and evidence that you examined, you're saying from the autopsy, that is inconsistent with being fired from a 45 like the shell casing from? Other than the piece of metal number 7?
Yeah, number 7 and number 6 I couldn't give a further classification to.
Okay. Are you able to tell in your examination whether any of these components would be consistent with hollow point ammunition?
I couldn't say for sure on item 6. Item 7, in my opinion, was more consistent with being a total metal jacket bullet.
I'm sorry, 7 up there was a piece of metal.
Excuse me, 5. I'm sorry. Item 5, the bullet I was able to classify. That is more consistent with being a total metal jacketed style bullet. Generally, that's electroplated to put the jacket on, and so it's totally encapsulated in a metal covering.
I have nothing further to say.
Any questions on this witness?
Thank you, Aaron. you're saying that both shell casings came from one gun,
That's my opinion, yes.
okay? And the shell casings, are different than the fragments that we're looking at that's on the screen are what lay people call the bullet that leaves the casing, correct?
Correct.
And you're saying number 7 is not a bullet, you don't know what it is?
I don't. Sometimes metal fragments get submitted to us. It could be, if it went, a bullet punched through a piece of metal, and it could be something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's 1:15. We'll take a 15-minute break at this time. Anything before I release the jury?
No, Your Honor.
Please rise. You may be seated. Mr. Director, we're going to do a sentence real quick. Anything before I bring, anything before we break for 15 minutes?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. We are adjourned. What are we gonna have?
Minute break. Here, you want me to keep repeat up question mark?
You look very nice.
In our modern society, technology has made it pretty impossible to disconnect and go off the grid entirely. With nearly every single business, stoplight, and so many homes having cameras, it really seems unlikely for anyone to just simply vanish without a trace. However, that's exactly what happened to 16-year-old Carly Gousset, and that's when she went missing from her home in a remote desert town in California. After her stepmom woke up to find Carly not in her bed and their front door cracked open, she assumed that maybe Carly had stepped outside for, some fresh air. However, she got a little worried when she didn't see Carly anywhere outside, and she became almost frantic when she realized that her cell phone, wallet, and even her glasses, which she needed to wear in order to see, were all still at home. Now, initially, the police might have assumed that this was a typical runaway case, or that Carly was out with some friends and would maybe be home soon. However, as more detail emerged about the events of that previous night, it became evident that this was anything but a routine disappearance. This terrifying, but yet intriguing story is one that will undoubtedly stay with you and have everybody wondering what really happened to Carly Gousset. Hey guys, I'm Annie Elise. This is 10 to Life. Let's jump right in. Chalfont Valley has a population of around 650 people, and it's located in Mono County, California, which is a very small community in the Owens Valley region, which is situated at the base of the Sierra Nevada mountain range. It's about 30 to 45 minutes away from several of the most renowned natural tourist destinations like Death Valley National Park, Mammoth Lakes, and the ancient Bristolstone Pine Forest, which is home to some of the oldest trees in the entire world. Chalfont is extremely remote, with the closest city of Bishop being around 15 miles and a 20-minute drive away. So as you can imagine, for teenagers in Chalfont, there isn't much to do unless you play some sort of sport at Bishop Union High School, or if you have a job maybe in the city. Now, as we often hear about, it's easy for teenagers to get in trouble for experimenting with drugs and alcohol simply out of boredom when they're living in a small town like this. And that was the case for Carly Gousset, who in 2018 had actually been suspended from school for using marijuana on campus. However, besides that, Carly was said to be a pretty good girl, a trustworthy kid who was just going through a little bit of a rocky period during her junior year. However, this seemingly innocent experimentation would ultimately damage more of Carly's life than just her one semester at school. Now, to understand what led to Carly being in this situation, we do need to go back to the beginning and really paint the entire picture of what's going on here. So in March of 1998, married couple Lindsay Fairley and Zachary Gousset had their very first child, a boy that they named Kane Gousset. 4 years later, they had a second child, a daughter that they named Carly Lane Gousset. Carly was born on May 13th, 2002. The family lived in Bishop, California, but unfortunately, the Goussets were a far from perfect, happy family. According to Lindsay, Zach would often drink after work, and his personality would turn angry and aggressive. He would allegedly break things in their home, and once even put his head through the drywall of their bathroom. Lindsay said that at some points in their relationship, her and Zach's arguments also turned physical. Now, even though this is Lindsay's account, she admitted to sometimes also being the aggressor as well, including physically. They both realized that their marriage was becoming pretty